The Federal Aid and Wildlife Restoration Act, also known as the Pittman-Robertson Act, was a groundbreaking piece of legislation passed in the year 1937. And this is a time period where sportsmen and women and conservationists realized that to have a sustainable wildlife population, we need to put money back into the system. So this legislation was put forth that enacted a 10 to 11% excise tax on firearms, ammunition, and archery equipment. What's really unique about this funding mechanism is the specific use cases that are allowable under this piece of legislation. Some of those use cases include wildlife research, hunter education programs, land acquisition, the establishment or management of public shooting ranges, but also for wildlife habitat. So these funds can be allocated to be used on specific habitat management projects at state-owned and state-managed lands.
In this video, you'll learn how IDNR district wildlife biologists and the Office of Land Management staff at Shelbyville State Fish and Wildlife Area conduct wildlife habitat improvements for the enhancement of wildlife abundance and diversity. As a result, these management activities also enhance the experience for the visitors who use our public state lands in Illinois.
Hi, I'm Mitch Hess. I am the W76D project manager here in Illinois. And the project for W76D is a Pittman-Robertson funding that we apply for biannually. And what we've done is we've selected 33 sites from our wildlife action plan, and they're our top priority sites, and we put the funding towards those sites. So we put these funds towards these 33 sites for two main purposes. The primary purpose would be for wildlife habitat management, whether that's habitat establishment or habitat restoration. And the second purpose we use it for is public access. So that's parking lots, access roads, culverts, kiosks, ADA accessible waterfowl blinds, anything that can help the public access more of our state sites and use more of it for hunting and fishing.
Our primary goal at Shelbyville State Fish and Wildlife Area is to manage for migratory waterfowl and other water birds. We do that primarily with these managed impoundments like you can see here behind me. We start flooding them. This is the North Dunn unit. We'll start flooding it with sheet water for early migrants like blue-winged teal and some shorebirds in September. We use pumps out of the Okaw River, so we'll start then and we'll gradually bring it up to maximize food availability right around the time that our duck season starts. So then this is a hunted area. It'll get hunted throughout the season. Around April 1st, we'll start dropping this about an inch a week. And in that, food will become slowly available to migratory waterfowl as we drop it as well, because anything more than 18 inches deep is unavailable to a dabbling duck. So as some of these deeper pools drop, then some food that's been unavailable all winter will become more available to them. One of the questions that I get pretty often around here is, why is managing for spring migration important? And it's something that we've really put an emphasis on over the past few years. And what happens here is we're leaving water in these units until April 1st when we start drawing them down. And all of these hens, all of these female ducks out here are going to go back to their breeding grounds in better condition because they've had more seed here, they've had more bugs here, they've fed well, their body condition is going to be better, and that should translate to them laying more eggs and then more ducks being able to migrate back down south next fall. So better spring migration habitat should lead to increased populations of ducks throughout North America. As we know, Illinois is the prairie state, but we've lost over 99% of our namesake. And one thing that we try to do here at Shelbyville Fish and Wildlife Area is restore some of that native prairie. Back behind me here, we've got about a 160-acre unit, if you combine everything around here, that we have planted native grasses and forbs to. And it's home to a lot of grassland nesting birds, so ground nesting birds, rabbits, and a variety of other wildlife. Lots of deer and turkeys actually utilize it as well. It is difficult to manage these areas here without fire. So as you can see, we've got some woody encroachment here. This unit's on our schedule to burn this spring. So we'll get a well-trained crew out here this spring and get some fire and knock the woody vegetation back a little bit. And then hopefully we'll utilize some of our contract money through habitat stamp funds and through other avenues like the federal dollars to come back in when mechanically remove some of this woody vegetation to make sure that it's maintained as a grassland. All right, so one of our biggest problems that we have at Shelbyville and throughout the state are invasive shrubs. The primary two that we deal with here at Shelbyville are bush honeysuckle and autumn olive. We use a grinder to remove them. You can see back here that he has ground out some of this. We'll come back in, we will treat the stumps, and then we'll come back in, foliar spray the resprouts. And what we do a lot of times with these open fields is we will disc them and then we'll plant them to a crop, something like clearfield sunflowers that we can use for weed control for a couple years, maybe provide a dove hunting opportunity for the general public, and then we can go to some more permanent habitat type once that seed source from these invasive shrubs has been removed. So here we are in a forest at Shelbyville State Fish and Wildlife Area. Our primary goal here is a lot of like what we talked about earlier. We're trying to manage for invasive shrubs. The primary invasive shrub that we deal with in the woodlands is bush honeysuckle. We've dealt with it mostly in this particular unit by prescribed fire. It's been on a 2 to 3 year rotation for the last 13 to 15 years, and we've seen a really good response. I mean, there's still some honeysuckle left in comparison to woods that haven't been treated. We've really made a big difference. This is beneficial for a lot of our woodland interior species. Wild turkeys are the most notable example. You see a lot of gray squirrels using it. You see white-tailed deer especially coming through here. You know, our recreational users tend to be drawn to these areas as well. So we see a lot of deer hunters out here, mushroom hunters out here all spring. These units tend to be really favored by the morel hunters because they're easier to find, and then oftentimes the fires themselves will cause a response from morels. So another part of that we haven't done in this particular unit, but we have in several throughout this project and throughout the state, is through some TSI. And what I'm talking about most of the time there is getting rid of less desirable trees in favor of more desirable trees. There are many reasons to do TSI. The most historical reason would be to improve your timber value if you're going to sell. That's not something we're looking to do here, but what we're looking to do here for the most part is to get rid of a lot of the maple species and things like that that really prevent sunlight from getting down. Historically, those weren't up on the ridge tops because we had a more consistent fire regime before European settlement. We'll come in, remove those maples, and that allows more sunlight to get to the ground, more herbaceous cover, more nesting cover for things like turkeys, and then it allows for more browse for deer and other things like that. Basically, we're trying to get rid of the invasive species and then get some sunlight on the ground to allow the seeds that are already here from native wildflowers and herbaceous species to respond. What we're trying to manage for here are future generations to be able to have oak species like this. This is a beautiful white oak tree. You know, historically they've been used for their timber value, but what I'm interested in as a wildlife biologist is their wildlife value, and it really can't be overstated. From the mass that they produce, the acorns they produce, just a valuable food source. I mean, I've seen everything from deer and turkeys certainly utilizing them, but I've seen wood ducks all the way up here on this hill foraging on these oak acorns. For a food value perspective, for wildlife, it can't get any better. And then you're also talking about good cavities for tree nesting species, things like wood ducks, hooded mergansers, raccoons, and then of course all of your tree squirrels really tend to use areas like this. So when we're managing forests in Illinois, what I'm looking to do, especially in the uplands, is manage for this type of forest to be available hundreds of years from now on these ridges, these oak hickory forests that are beneficial both to humans and to wildlife.
So now that we visited with State Fish and Wildlife Area staff, learned how they're using these specific funds to meet their management goals, whether it's managing waterfowl, managing upland species and prairie, or even managing some of the forest interiors and controlling invasive species, we wanted to come back and reiterate kind of the importance that hunters and that hunting plays into this funding model. One of the big components is obviously the sale of hunting licenses. Not only is this an additional funding mechanism in and of itself, but remember, it's very important to how these PR dollars are allocated from the federal government down to the individual states. So thank you to all the hunters who continue to purchase your hunting license each year. And maybe you're new to hunting or want to get started, check out the Illinois Learn to Hunt program, and we are designed to help you get started.
On behalf of IDNR, we thank you for your continued support of conservation. and please consider taking someone new hunting this season to help pass on the tradition. All right, man. I think we got something.